Level 0. There's someone in your life right now who's hiding something from you. They smile when you make jokes they don't understand. They nod when you give instructions they can't follow. They laugh at references that fly completely over their head, and they're terrified you'll notice. Because in a world that measures worth by how fast you think, being slow means being invisible. Or worse, being the punchline. This is IQ 70 to 84, borderline intellectual functioning, and it affects roughly 14% of the global population. 1 in 7 people you meet exists in this cognitive twilight zone. Not disabled enough for help. Not capable enough to compete. Just struggling in silence while the world moves at a pace they can never quite match. At this level, basic tasks become endurance tests. Reading a rental agreement feels like decoding a foreign language. Following multi-step instructions requires intense concentration. Math beyond simple addition turns into an unsolvable maze. Your brain is running a marathon while everyone else jogs comfortably beside you. School reveals the cracks early. While classmates grasp algebra, you hit walls. Teachers assume you're not trying. But no amount of pressure changes the fundamental speed at which your brain processes information. You memorize formulas without understanding why they work. Homework that takes others 30 minutes takes you 3 hours. The cruelest part? You look completely normal. So when you fail to understand something, people assume you're lazy. Research shows that people in this range often go undiagnosed because they fall into a gap between clinical disability and typical functioning. You're smart enough to know you're struggling, but not disabled enough to qualify for support. Adulthood brings new battles. Job applications, contracts, tax documents all require abstract reasoning just beyond comfortable reach. You watch others advance while you plateau, knowing the difference isn't effort. It's the brain you were born with. Employment options narrow to manual labor, basic service work, roles where thinking can be minimized. The emotional toll can be devastating. Research consistently shows elevated rates of depression and anxiety at this level. You're told to try harder, focus better, think smarter, as if willpower alone could rewire your neural pathways. The shame becomes a constant companion. You develop elaborate strategies to hide your struggles, exhausting yourself in the process. But here's what nobody tells you about this level. Just above you, something fundamental changes. Tasks that feel impossible suddenly become manageable. The fog lifts. And that transition reveals something shocking about how thin the line between struggle and competence really is. Level 1. You've made it. Your IQ sits between 85 and 100, placing you where roughly 35% of humanity lives. You're no longer struggling to survive, but you're also not equipped to excel. You exist in the vast middle, competent enough to function, but not sharp enough to stand out. At this level, life becomes predictable. You finish high school, maybe community college, you follow instructions well, learn through repetition, and perform reliably. You're the backbone of the service industry, manufacturing, retail. You show up, do what you're told, and don't complicate things. Complex problem solving can remain challenging. When something breaks down, you need a manager to troubleshoot. Abstract thinking, understanding theories, grasping hypotheticals exists just outside your most comfortable range. You navigate life through concrete examples and established routines. Change is uncomfortable because it disrupts the patterns you've memorized. College coursework requiring critical analysis becomes a wall. You can memorize facts beautifully, but applying them creatively? That's a different cognitive skill set. Essay writing feels like torture. Synthesizing multiple sources into original arguments remains perpetually difficult. Financially, this level correlates with stability but rarely wealth. You understand basic budgeting. Bills get paid. But building significant wealth requires seeing opportunities, understanding market forces, anticipating trends. You work your entire life and retire with modest savings. Investment strategies beyond simple savings accounts feel impossibly complex. The social experience is interesting. You connect easily with others in your range. Conversations flow naturally. Humor lands perfectly. But interact with someone significantly more intelligent, and the gap becomes obvious. They reference concepts you've never encountered. Use vocabulary that sounds foreign. You may feel inadequate without understanding exactly why. Here's what cognitive science reveals. People at this level are aware that some think faster, understand deeper, create more originally, but they're not equipped to bridge that gap. You see the ceiling without being able to break through it. You know there's more complexity above you, but accessing it feels impossible. But average intelligence isn't the worst place to be. You have friends, relationships, purpose, and you're smart enough to find contentment in that. Except there's always that nagging question. What would it feel like to think just a little bit faster? Level 2. Welcome to IQ 100 to 115, where roughly 33% of the population resides. This is cognitive competence in its purest form. You're smart enough to handle complex tasks, but not so intelligent that you threaten anyone. You're the person who gets things done, who makes society actually function. School becomes manageable. You grasp new concepts without excessive struggle. Make decent grades with reasonable effort. You're not valedictorian material, but you're solid. Teachers appreciate you because you deliver consistent B work. You understand 80% of the curriculum without much struggle. That final 20% requires real effort. The workplace loves people at this level. You're the competent professional, the reliable nurse, the skilled tradesperson, the effective middle manager. You solve problems within established frameworks, improve existing processes, and execute plans that others design. Companies are built on people like you. One of your greatest strengths? You can translate between different intelligence levels. You simplify complex ideas for those struggling. You bridge the gap between visionaries and implementers. This makes you invaluable in team environments. You're the interpreter, the explainer, the one who makes things actually work. But there's a subtle frustration. You're smart enough to recognize patterns in politics, economics, social systems. You see problems developing, envision solutions. But when you try explaining these insights, they don't always land. Less intelligent people think you're overcomplicating. More intelligent people think you're stating the obvious. You exist in a cognitive middle ground, where you're too smart for some, not smart enough for others. Financially, high average intelligence correlates with stability. You understand compound interest, read contracts carefully, make informed decisions. You retire comfortably, own a home. You're not rich, but you're secure. You can plan 5 to 10 years ahead reliably. Beyond that, predictions become fuzzy. Relationships require careful selection. You need intellectual stimulation that pure average intelligence might not provide. Small talk feels boring. You want conversations with substance, debates about ideas, discussions that actually matter. But you also need someone who won't make you feel intellectually inferior. Here's what neuroscience reveals. You're smart enough to grasp complex ideas when explained well, but not quite equipped to generate them yourself. You appreciate genius when you see it, even envy it, but you can't replicate it. You're the audience for innovation, not the creator of it. And there's a particular kind of hunger at the top of this range. You can feel something just beyond your reach, thoughts that almost connect. But what happens when intelligence finally crosses into territory where you're not just competent, but genuinely exceptional? Level 3. Cross into IQ 115 to 125 and the game changes. This is superior intelligence, affecting roughly 12% of the population. For the first time, you're noticeably, measurably sharper than most people around you. School becomes almost effortless. You finish assignments in half the time others need. You read once and retain information that others study for hours to barely grasp. You're consistently near the top without breaking a sweat. Standardized tests feel like puzzles designed for children. But being this smart in standard environments can feel isolating. You finish tests early and sit in bored silence. Group projects frustrate you because you end up doing most of the work. Teachers don't challenge you because they're focused on the middle of the class. You learn to hide your abilities to avoid extra work or resentment. The workplace delivers tangible advantages. You're qualified for demanding careers. Engineering, medicine, law. You see solutions others overlook, identify problems before they escalate, anticipate consequences others miss. You rise through ranks faster, earn more, command respect. Your ability to solve complex problems quickly becomes your signature skill. But success brings complications. The smartest people aren't always the most successful. Leadership often goes to those with exceptional social intelligence rather than analytical brilliance. You watch less intelligent people get promoted because they're better at playing politics, at managing relationships, at making others feel important. Your cognitive experience becomes fundamentally different. You start seeing patterns everywhere. Connections between ideas that seem unrelated appear obvious to you. You understand how systems interlock, how principles from one field apply to another, how causes ripple into distant effects. Your mind builds mental models automatically. This pattern recognition has a dark side. You see societal problems with painful clarity. Political manipulations that fool others are transparent to you. Economic disasters announce themselves years in advance, and you feel helpless because being smart enough to diagnose problems doesn't grant you power to fix them. Nobody listens until it's too late. Socially, this level demands code switching. Your sense of humor becomes more layered, more abstract, more conceptual. You make references that sail over most heads, so you learn to adjust, simplifying vocabulary, dumbing down insights, explaining jokes that should be obvious. You maintain two versions of yourself, the real one and the socially acceptable one. Relationships require careful navigation. You need a partner who can engage intellectually without feeling threatened by your abilities. Someone secure enough to be challenged, curious enough to grow. These people exist, but they're statistically rare. Dating becomes a filtering process. The existential burden is seeing more than you can control. You understand complexities that others dismiss as simple. You live several moves ahead, which mostly means watching preventable disasters unfold while others insist everything is fine. You become Cassandra, cursed with an accurate prophecy that nobody believes. But even at this level, you sense there's further to go. You encounter people who think even faster, see even deeper, understand even more, and that's when you realize, above superior intelligence lies gifted territory, where thinking transforms from a tool into something closer to a superpower.